You are in the thick of it right now. That article that you wrote at the start of the year caused quite the ruckus.
Yeah, it did. And it's funny because this is some research we've been doing for, over a year. And often it just takes a single op-ed and people start paying attention.
How would you categorize the last couple of months for you and the sort of fallout?
Yeah, I mean, one of the really interesting things is people are debating just exactly the extent of the divide, the nature of it, what's going on. So you have a lot of pollsters like myself saying, hey, this is kind of unprecedented what we're seeing, young women becoming much more liberal. And demographically, we're seeing rapid changes when it comes to like LGBTQ identity, growing education divides between young men and young women. So there's a lot of things that are emerging or new, and the political divide is just one of those things. But there are the cold water throwers who largely political scientists who want to say, well, hold on, let's wait till we can get some corroborating data. But the fact of the matter is, actually, there's a lot of corroborating data already from a lot of really reliable sources that suggest that something is going on. And we can, I think, debate the margins around how extreme is the divide, how far apart are young men and young women, and on what issues. But I think we can safely say that something really big is happening.
All right, so just how big is this ideological divide between young men and young women? What's happening?
So, according to the Gallup data, which is some of the research that we've been using, we conduct our own surveys at the Survey Center on American Life, but we also do look at a lot of different other polls from the Pew Research Center and places like Gallup that have really long and reliable, trustworthy trends. And so Gallup shows beginning around 2014, 2015, this emerging ideological divide with young women becoming significantly more liberal. Around 42, 43% identify as liberal in the latest polls. And young men really haven't shifted all that much when it comes to their ideology. So there's anywhere from a 12 to 14 point gap between them now.
Right. You've got, at no time in the past quarter century has there been such a rapid divergence between the views of young men and young women.
Right. And, as far as we know, this is something that will continue to shape the way these folks relate to each other in terms of their, priorities when it comes to, the politicians that they want to nominate and elect and the issues that they care about. One of the really significant divisions we see is actually over the issue of abortion. And while both young men and young women tend to lean pretty significantly pro-choice, when it comes to the priorities of that issue, we did a poll in 2022, right before the midterm elections, and 61% of young women said that abortion was a critical priority for them, but it was only like 30% of young men. So just in terms of what they care about and how much they care about it is really different.
What is the age bracket for this? Because could this not just be the usual young people are more liberal effect, and we've got a bit of social media that's maybe kind of emphasizing or magnifying that, and kind of that explains it?
Yeah, I think when it comes to this stuff, there's a lot that's going on and a lot that's pretty complicated. So I think the social media actually plays a really significant role in all this. But the other thing is, like, when it comes to the age gaps, one of the problems we have in polling is we're often talking about different age groups. So in the research that we do, we identify young people as 18 to 29, and we identify them as young adults or young women or young men. But some polls will scoot that up to 18 to 34, which is, again, they're young, but also there's a pretty significant difference between comparing 18 to 34 and 18 to 29 in terms of life experience. And economically, people are in just some different positions in their mid 20s versus their early 30s. And so we do have this problem. Sometimes we're talking past each other, and different pollsters handling things a little bit differently. And then journalists, when they rush to cover this stuff, not to mention podcasters, they're trying to sort through, a kind of confluence of different and sometimes contradictory information, and it can be challenging to sort through.
So is this different than just young people becoming more liberal? This is because young people have always been young people. Like, we have a regular supply of 15-year-olds and 17-year-olds and 20-year-olds and such. But this is a marked difference from that.
Yeah, no, absolutely. So if we compared young people today versus young people a generation ago. So we're not comparing baby boomers and Generation Z. We're not comparing generational cohorts. We're actually looking at young people across time.
Right. Do men and women live on different planets then? Do they just see the world in very different
Mars and
ways?
Venus, you mean? I think in one way, one of the things that's really challenging, and I think it is contributing to this kind of gender antagonism that we're seeing, is that so much of the interactions we're seeing among young men and young women is occurring online, on social media, on platforms that it's really easy to be to be dehumanized and to dehumanize people, to not proceed with a lot of caution or empathy, not to take people seriously. And so I think that's a significant problem. One of the things that I wrote recently for this great organization called the American Institute for Boys and Men, which Richard Reeves runs, who's great. I'm a huge fan. And one of the things I wrote for them is the decline in dating, particularly among young men. We've seen a really precipitous decline in how often teenagers are dating, spending time, having a boyfriend or a girlfriend. And I think that's problematic in that you kind of learn how to engage with someone in a really difficult and situations that require a lot of nuance, a lot of understanding, again, a lot of empathy. So like successful relationships have all that and can be very fraught. And so it's helpful to have experiences earlier so that when you move into your 20s and you're out on your own, you have some experience to draw from when you're trying to engage and trying to date and navigating really difficult, complex romantic situations.